all the guitar has to play is
yeah.
right. Oh, it's just got to be simple.
If that even, eh?
If that
That
even.
even.
Yeah, you know it.
My guest today is Phil Ceberano. Phil has performed, played guitar, recorded and written music with many of the finest musicians this country has to offer over the last 30 years. Phil spent many of his touring and recording years as co-songwriter, collaborator and musical director-producer with his sister Kate Ceberano. Phil also runs a school holiday program, Rock Academy, for young musicians, and also continues to track guitar and create content in his studio, Aloha Studios. On top of that, Phil is creative director for Flourish PR, a PR company operated by his wife Angela. Now, this conversation with Phil was a lot of fun. Many laughs, beers, nuggets of wisdom, impersonations, theories, mantras and stories. When I'm putting these podcasts together, I ask my guests to send me some music which I can use for the intro. I chased Phil up a few times, and yesterday he just said, stuff this, I'll write and record a track especially for the episode. That's what you can hear now. And he's called it Stevie Burps. You can hear the whole song at the end of this episode. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Phil Ceberano. I think we're rolling. Phil Ceberano, welcome to the Gig Life podcast.
Mate, it's good to be here.
Man,
very good.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, I was wondering if we'd met before in the flesh.
I saw you play once, and I was trying to track back the year today, and it was, I reckon, it was either 2001 or 2002, and it was at the Harbourside Brasserie, and you were playing guitar with Professor Groove.
Okay.
Yeah, and Calvin Welsh was playing drums.
There were some heady days indeed.
Yeah. My wife's a big Professor Groove fan.
Oh yeah.
And dragged me and the crew down there. It was an awesome night. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, well, Josh and Roland were kind of like funk rebels.
Yep.
Funk punk rebels.
Yep.
And I always dug the way that, because like with the funk scene, like any scene, it can get very kind of like, it can get quite narrow, and then suddenly there's parameters of what is considered credible funk.
Yeah.
Or, it's the same with jazz and everything, right?
Yeah.
And I really like those kind of scoundrels that don't really stick within those parameters, and those two guys were like that. And I was really always loved playing in that band. It was a lot of fun. Professor Groove.
Yeah. How often did you play with them?
Yeah, there was a time there where it was 2 or 3 nights a week for like maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So I mean, you're in Melbourne now. So how long were you in Sydney? Because you were here for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. I kind of landed in Sydney on my way back from the States. Doing an album with Kate, and I think it might have been about 1993 or 4. And then I escaped Sydney.
Smart man.
back to Melbourne with my tail between my legs around 2002, I think.
So tail between your legs, what do you mean? What happened?
Okay, so Sydney around that time, you're talking about Professor Groove and the Booty Affair. Around that time, Sydney was on fire. Like Bondi was wild. It was filled with creative people, actors, musicians, artists, people writing plays, photographers, and of course you had all the models and the media and all of those types as well. But it was bohemian, if you like it was commercial bohemian, if you like. It was wild Bondi bohemian.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of partying and a lot of fun to be had. I'd moved up from Melbourne, and Melbourne was always pretty wild as well, and a lot of gigs. But then when I moved up to Sydney around that time, I seemed to get in with the right crew and to be playing a lot of gigs. There was a funk scene, the Bondi funk scene, which was kind of coming up, and there were pubs where they would have these jam nights. And, we all love DJs, but this was like a real band and a packed, sweaty room, all dancing, having a great time, and it was really quite unpretentious, and it was quite devil may care, and it was sort of there was no real snobbery or anything about it,
Yeah.
But then after about, I guess it was 7 or 8 years of that, and the partying and everything, it just kind of, after a while, it just gets the better of you. If you don't find a center, if you don't find some kind of, I guess, spiritual, whatever, however you want to call it, center or balance, you can go into a dark place. I didn't go too dark, right? But a lot of friends of mine were casualties of that scene. And you can find those scenes anywhere, So I went back to Melbourne for a fresh start, and I started all over again, back and around.
Yeah, good on you. I think I know what you mean by that. Kind of it starting to get dark, because it was around that time, well, just before that time actually. I met my wife in 2000. Yeah. The couple of years leading up to that, and sort of a couple of years after. Yeah, it was some pretty dark sort of party times, and.
Yeah,
I'm just lucky I found my wife. Otherwise, I don't know where I'd be. I don't even know if I'd be here, to be honest. It was like that. I know what you mean by it. It was just a crazy time around that time.
Yeah, and when I say spiritual center, I don't necessarily just mean spirituality.
I know what you mean.
I mean, you know what I mean, like getting in touch with what's actually really important on a big scale, on a big picture thing, beyond just your own pleasure dome.
Yeah.
And. Like, I don't want to say I didn't have a great time. Are you kidding me? It was awesome, It was really, really awesome.
Yeah.
But just too many nights getting home and the sun was already up, and you've been at Cuba and, or I remember one night after the second Booty Affair gig of the night would start at like 1 a.m. and go through till 4 at around midnight. And in the Cross.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of like, the positive and negative is, the negative was I was sort of falling asleep because I was just completely, done. But the positive on the funk and the groove, and you're playing with someone like Calvin Welsh.
Yeah.
And you're playing one guitar part for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Those Professor Groove jams. Yeah.
You soon learn about the pocket,
and for sure.
And learning to kind of like, okay, well, I've just played 8 bars of the same thing. Now I'm going to play another 8 bars, and it's going to be even funkier. How do you do that without changing it much? You just lock in with Calvin. You listen closer to where he's putting the hi-hats and the kick. And there were times where it could go for 10 minutes on just a real, and then it could lift without any kind of dynamic lift necessarily, but just pocket.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about that back then.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of the positives and minuses of that scene, and really learned a lot about music, then. So it was a good time.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. The last bunch of guests I've had, we've kind of started with that because, I mean, obviously, like I said, it's the elephant in the room. Like everybody's life's changed, and And what I have been asking is what you were doing up to, maybe a month or two before COVID hit,
Yeah.
and then from when COVID hit, what got blown out, and
Yeah.
where you're at now.
Yeah, okay. So I've ended up wearing a lot of hats down here in
Yep.
Melbourne. And I have a lot of different projects on the go, and a lot of different options. I've got corporate gigs, I've got pub gigs, I've got a full-time gig as, excuse me, I just burped because of
I do it all the time.
Awesome cold beer that I've got.
Actually, I've got I've got this module and it's got a noise gate on it.
Yeah,
it's
great.
Perfect for burps, eh?
Fantastic.
I'll send you the setting.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what was I saying? So I wear a lot of hats. So I've got, my full-time gig as of like 5 years ago has been, and still is, as a creative director with our family business. My wife and I have a PR company called Flourish PR.
Yep.
And that's been a real eye-opener and a real education and a fantastic insight into the way things are, the way hype is created, the way communications, the way you communicate your brand, all that sort of stuff. I've learned a real lot about that, and I've gotten into social media and content creation, filming content, editing, and learning about social media and marketing through that. So that's one of the things I do. Another thing that I do is I run a school holiday program called Rock Academy. The interesting thing with that was that sort of 4 weeks after the lockdown started, we had a Rock Academy planned, which is something I can talk about at length. But basically, it's a school holiday program where we get young kids to prepare for a gig. So it starts Monday, and they've got the gig on Friday. We obviously, because of COVID and the lockdown, we had to take that online. And I was absolutely blown away that, we got 20 kids, so we got 4 bands, and they online through Zoom, the way we're talking now, put the song together, put an original song together. One of them would become like the engineer and record the parts that would be emailed in, right? And they'd write and produce the song, and then they made a film clip, right? They'd all send in their little videos that they'd take on their iPhones and send them in, and then we had like a live online sort of viewing concert on the Friday night, which was great, So that was happening before the lockdown. I got a gig cancelled, a massive corporate gig cancelled on the day that they were going to have the Melbourne Grand Prix, and they cancelled that on the day they cancelled it. So then the corporate gig I was to have that night cancelled. Huge gig. They paid, and it was all great. Oh, good. But it was a really big gig that we do that I've done every year for the last 7 years. And then from then, pretty much all gigs, like we all know, are done, and we're not really certain when they're going to come back. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's where we're at. The thoughts that I've been having on this, if I can share them,
please,
are that what we have to get back to, and when you're doing a podcast, you run the risk of feeling like you have to speak in very profound terms the whole time.
Nah, not this podcast.
Right. But
you say how you want to say it, man.
What I've been thinking of a lot is that we have to come back to the pure essence of creativity and realize that we're all brothers and sisters in the same field, whether you're a visual artist, whether you're a musician, whether you're a screenwriter or a designer or an architect. We're all, I'm not going to use that fucking Ben Lee quote. If I hear that term again, right? I just want to go out and I want to punch myself in the face.
I don't know what it is, so you're going to have to say it one more time,
You know what it is, brother.
We're all in this together.
Oh, you said it.
I got it. Boom.
Right?
I think that's the only Ben Lee song I know, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, good on him. Bless his heart.
Yeah, for sure.
No, what I was going to say is that creatives, the new norm should be that we are one. If you're a creative, we're all one sort of thing, and we all can share and adapt and in the same way as my wife took me on board as a creative director in a PR company, because she just said, no, you've got great ideas. You think and live and breathe outside the square. You're perfect for this because we're in it. You're able to look from outside and actually maybe come up with some ideas that we would never thought of, right?
Yeah.
That's the essence of creativity. When you're writing a song and you write, let's say Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is a sort of an adaptation of Wild Thing with a little bit of one chord difference, right?
Yeah.
Right. But they look at it from a different angle and they talk about the content within it is about angst and teen suffering and, all of that with Dave Grohl on drums. You've got a hit because they haven't contrived it from commercial interest or from a record company's kind of thing. They've just gone, well, that's where our heart's at, and let's think from a creative perspective, a true spiritually connected creative perspective. I know I'm sounding a bit whack, right?
No,
But the new norm for all of us is that, like, I've an example, and I know I'm kind of like I'm riffing here, but like I've got a mate who's an incredible drummer, but he's also an amazing animator. He does incredible animation stuff. Now he'll go, okay, pivot, shift. Now I'm just going to do some more animation, and some animation stuff.
Yeah.
I play guitar, I do gigs, I'm a band leader, I'm all of that sort of stuff, but I might think about doing some voiceover stuff.
Yep.
Because I'm sitting here now and I'm thinking of, and with my mic, and I don't know. We need to all
just on the, hang on. I want to paint a picture of you doing the voiceover here.
Yeah.
So Phil, is wearing what looks like a leopard.
It's a leopard print cardigan.
Leopard print cardigan. Yep.
I stole off my wife. Yeah.
Right. Leopard skin cardigan. He's got a bear in his hand. His hair's a little bit whack.
Yeah.
And so just do that voiceover again. Just do that.
Okay. Well, the voice that comes to me, if I was to go there with the way I'm sort of dressed and feeling right now, let me take you there. Oh, you want to know where I got this from? All right. So we've got a 58 Les Paul here. I've always been a Telecaster player, as you know, but I found that when I was playing the big festivals, the big concert halls, the telly just wasn't thick enough, and so Jeff Beck gave me this 58, and it was heavy, it was thick sounding, didn't feel right, but the next gig we played was like Wembley Arena, and it was perfect for it. So it wasn't by choice that I chose this guitar. It was simply because it was practical. There you go. That's the zone I get into.
Right, that's brilliant.
Yeah, the generic English blues guy.
Yeah, very good. I was thinking that was either Jimmy Page. That was Jimmy Page. A little bit of Jimmy Page there.
That's it. Yeah, a little bit of Jimmy Page.
Yep.
Yeah.
A little bit of Keith.
A little bit of
Keith there. But you're probably
generic.
a little bit. You're a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? You're a lot better with your words than Keith probably would have been.
Sure. Yeah.
Keith on a good day, perhaps. Or
yeah. You know what I love about some of those guys?
Yeah.
I love it when Jimmy Page speaks, and it's kind of up here, isn't it? It's like, Robert would come to me with all these lyrics, and we'd be like, can't you write a song about a sexy girl? And instead you're coming to me with songs about freaking Gandalf and gnomes and all that. I'm like, what the fuck? What's this, Lord of the Rings?
Oh, too good.
Yeah, so, we all have to learn to pivot and adapt and stuff, and not just feel that we're one-dimensional. And if we do feel that we're a one-trick pony, now is the perfect time to get online and learn some stuff. I've been trying to train myself up a little bit more on streaming software and the right kind of cameras to use and all of that kind of stuff. And for any guitarists out there, we're going to find that sort of stuff's crucial to mentor online, to be having 2 camera angles with some good audio and be able to sort of do live lessons and things like that.
Yep.
A lot of what holds us back from learning new stuff is fear that we'll, because I'm a muso and I've quite often been known to say, oh, hey, what would I know? I'm just a dumbass rock and roller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that attitude that we can't afford to have anymore to hold us back, because no, we may not be Einstein, or we may not be, Elon Musk, right? But there's even certain parts of our brains that those guys don't have that we have, that it's allowed us to learn an instrument,
Yeah.
So we tap into those things and we make them work for us in fields that we may not have thought we were cut out to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Editing, for example, is something I never thought I'd be, I'd be like, gee, the second I would get into the program of Final Cut Pro or something like that.
Oh, you mean for video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be, hey, even Pro Tools, when I first started getting into Pro Tools, I was too scared to touch the mouse, too scared that I would ruin something,
Right.
It wasn't until I realised that it all stays in the brain of it, that you can actually undo and stuff, that I felt free enough to move forward with it,
Yeah, right.
But so I think we can all come together and help each other out and create new ways to move forward, after this. That was a very long-winded response to the COVID question, but
No, it's cool.
I'm only going to be positive about this, because there has been some really positive and great things that have come out of it.
Yep.
And you can only really focus on that, because that's the only thing that's going to get us through.
Yeah. Talk about you just talked about then the video and the streaming and stuff like that. There's kind of two sides of this at the moment. Some people, and to be honest, at the start of all this, I said I will only look at stuff that's really high quality and sounds really good and is like the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of thought that until I started watching Peter Northcote's
there you go
videos.
Yeah.
Right. Peter does spend a lot of time, but I think what's great about Peter's stuff is that there are mistakes there.
Yep.
And it's there for everybody to watch, and it's got those mistakes in it, but people are watching it, man. You nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it, because what Peter has is heart. Yeah. Peter is a caring, loving guy, right? And he's not only a virtuoso, right, but he's a communicator. Now, this is one of the things we're going to have to get on top of and reconnect with the new norm, is that art and creativity and musicianship and all of the things that go along with being a creative is about communication. It's about connection. It's about, if you ever had to say in a band that we're an inclusive band, it's almost like by saying it, what were you before? Because music
is by nature inclusive because it's communication, you know. So it has to be that. Peter Northcote is that kind of guy. Now, if you talk about the key word, and again, almost like some of these things, when you say the word, the idea disappears. But when you're talking about is authenticity, right? And authenticity is people being real and being honest and open. It's a real tricky one in show business because on one side we're being asked to be real and authentic and open and honest. On the other side, if you're real, authentic, open and honest, you better be prepared to be cut down by the media as well for being fragile, vulnerable, outspoken, full of yourself, arrogant, conceited. So we're in turmoil, right? But what we can do now is we can actually take back our own brand online, and with online, people choose to tune in. You know, they it's their choice, like a podcast. You know, they choose to. So if someone doesn't like what you're saying, then they can go. You know what I mean? Like you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, and I don't agree with everything he says, but I agree with the fact that he's allowed to say it, you know, and share it. You know, I'll fight for his right to have his voice, right? But I won't fight necessarily for some of the things that he might say. You know what I mean? But do you know what I mean? So similarly, when it comes to authenticity, we have to be able to have a look at ourselves and go, well, what am I? You know, what am I? Who am I? What can I share that's real? You know, and he's doing that, and that's warts and all. You know, like a lot of the time, I think it might come from maybe from music teachers or definitely music Nazis. They're so focused on getting it right that they miss all the gorgeousness of the journey and the adventure of maybe a couple of bung notes in there or a couple of weird sounds. You know, I call them goobers. Sometimes when I'm recording a track, you know, there'll be some weird string pop or out of tune note or whatever. And on first listen, I go, oh, that's terrible. But then I keep the track and I keep going back to it. And then I use that track because that's the interesting, authentic, real, non-robotic thing that we love. We love to hear that. Similarly, when you and I have a conversation, we're having beers and we're going to burp, you know. That's not going to happen on mainstream commercial TV. In fact, they'll manufacture it like you see them do on some of those shows. And you and I both smell a rat. We go, yeah, well, that's manufactured. That's produced, you know. There's no such thing as reality TV anymore because it's all being produced as entertainment, you know. So, again, I'm getting very profound and long-winded, but like, you know, guys like Peter Northcote, there's a mate of mine down here in Melbourne, Marcel Yamuni, who's also like just a freak, right? Freak. And he got on the other night.
He's doing the live stream production stuff. Like he's live streaming his project and talking about the plugins and this and that. Yeah, it's great. Really
it's legendary. You know, and he actually did a very open and honest post the other day, a video, having a go at people just pointlessly putting sort of
comments,
smart-ass comments. You know?
That's right. Yeah, I saw that.
And I respect him for it. You know, I appreciate it. I'm like, dude, good on you. Good on you, you know, because part of that whole snide comment thing is that those people aren't actually doing great stuff themselves and they've got nothing else better to do than just sit there and hang shit or whatever their own way, you know.
That's it.
And again, though, I'll say I'll fight for their right to have their freedom of speech, right? But if I had to pick, I would fight more for Marcel's right to tell them to pull their head in, you know? So, Geez, we're really getting deep. This is much deeper than any other podcast I've done. This is great.
I'm going to have a swig of my beer.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec. And just because you noticed, you said before that it was okay to burp.
Yeah.
I've just turned the noise gate off, so you're gonna hear my burps now. So
Okay, great.
This is what it's all
Great.
about.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of roll back a little bit now.
Yeah, man. Yeah, sure.
I mean, it is fairly documented. Your career and
Yeah.
a mate of mine has a podcast, the Guitar Speak podcast,
Yes.
Matt Wakeling, and you did an episode with him.
Yeah.
So I recommend people go back and listen to that because that's really good. So we'll touch a little bit on some of that stuff. So I want to know where you're born and sort of your musical upbringing.
All of that.
And we'll sort of, we don't have to go through all of it, but just basically, and let's sort of just lead up.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Okay, so here's the story. I was born in Hawaii, and my father was in the United States Marine Corps, and he was a trumpet player, and he was in the marching band called the drum and bugle team, and so they after. It was in the early 60s as a sort of a goodwill PR sort of thing. They toured around the world and they were quite famous at the time, very precision marching and, throwing the trumpets in the air and fantastic sort of stuff. And my dad was a sergeant and they were out in Australia and that's where he met my mother. And then it was a wild romance. And then he came back and took her like months later and took her back to Hawaii. They got married and had my older brother, myself, and then Kate was born back here in Australia when we moved back when I was about 2 or 3. So there's always been a real connection with Hawaii, and the music from Hawaii. It's sort of like it's aloha music, as you would know from, like the harmonies and everything from like the islands is not like anything else. And I can only really kind of compare it to, say, when I hear mariachi music from Mexico or Spanish ballads. There's a thing, and I researched it, and actually the whole ukulele kind of Hawaiian singing style comes from Mexican cowboys that
Really?
went over to Hawaii in the early days to as cattle cowboys, and they've got that way of singing that's sort of, I don't know, it's very mournful and so that's had a real connection with me musically and sort of embodied itself in Kate and I.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in Melbourne in the late 60s and 70s, my dad is a martial arts legend in the field of karate and Filipino fighting arts, and so we all trained in karate. Kate didn't, but my brother and I still train, and my brothers have become quite successful in that field as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this sort of like, this is an interesting thing, and I think we've spoken a little bit about this, but this is where I kind of developed my fascination for heroes and heroism, and mentors and people to look up to. And later in life, in fact, I've realised that we've dropped a little bit of that sense of having the elders of the tribe and the people that we looked up to, that we respected, that gave us guidance that we could go to. I always had that. I had people around me that I could get that, and I get worried sometimes that the youth of today don't have that, and so that's why I set up Rock Academy, to create a sense that the people that came before them, you don't just respect them because you should or just because. You respect them because of what they can share with you, you know? And that's very much an Islander thing, as you'd probably know.
Yep.
It's about the marae. It's about the spirit of the community, you know, and you all come together. This was something that was in our family ever since we were kids and remains, you know. It's obviously has its rocky roads sometimes, you know, but that kind of support system, you know, and that's always come through in anything that Kate and I have done together, you know, playing music together. And that was how it all started. Does that give you a sort of a foundation of where we
Totally.
Yeah?
100%. Yep.
It's a bit
And I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I mean I've seen you you know, talk about aloha and stuff like that, but I didn't realize that was the connection there with Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. There'd be a lot more levels to it, but as the story goes, my grandparents moved from the Philippines to Hawaii in the 30s, and then my father was born there in the 40s and grew up as a tough, street fighting, you know, rough, poor kid growing up in the plantation fields. It was like the cane fields. It was really rough for him. So he discovered martial arts, and that's what sort of got him through. And I think that I've kind of inherited a sense of a sort of a working class sense, really, that you have to struggle through stuff, which is good and bad, because yes, it's a great idea to know that you have to work really, really hard to get what you want. But in the first world, right, it's almost like sometimes if there isn't that struggle, you'll create it, you know, because you're a creative person. So I grew up in North Bourne, and it was just pleasant and gorgeous and leafy streets, and there wasn't poverty. There wasn't, I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of money, but, you know, we always ate, you know, and we always had clothes and shoes on our feet. So we weren't like struggling. And so I remember thinking, well, how can I play the blues? You know, how can I honestly write a song about struggle and turmoil and, you know, I got trouble on my mind. I'm angry all the time and blah, blah, blah. So I sort of had to create that thing, that rock and roll thing, you know, because it wasn't like I was, you know, you hear about guys like Jeff Beck and, you know, Mick Jagger and them growing up in poverty-stricken kind of England streets, and it's all cold and drab. Those guys can play the blues, you know, because it's like struggle, you know. But then musically, what that does, I think, is it gives, when you've got so much choice, is you go, okay, well, let's try and create something new. And a lot of Melbourne musicians in the 80s, 70s and the 80s just went, oh, okay, well, let's experiment, you know. And that's when you got things like Hunters and Collectors, Nick Cave, and the Bad Seeds. You got just experimental music, you know. You got people fusing early barely can play jazz with funk, and that's how you got I'm Talking, right? They were quite basic as players in the beginning, and you know, and then they got the influences from overseas. And we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, like, you know, MTV. You only had little bits of stuff that you could hear and get from record stores. And so you'd fuse things in a way, like, because we didn't have those things to compare ourselves to, you sort of went, well, why not? Why? Let's have a go, you know? And yeah, so that was a really great place to grow up in. Melbourne in the 80s was amazing. Going to places like the Seaview Ballroom in St Kilda and, seeing bands. I mean, just watching Kate's evolution in the early days was freaking mind-blowing. Like she could sing jazz overnight and people would say, oh, she's obviously studied Billie Holiday, hasn't she? And I remember saying to this woman, well, no, I live with Kate. She's 15 and we live in North Balwyn. And she's the only records she's heard are my records and they're not Billie Holiday. They're like...
So who were you listening? Yeah, who were you listening to?
Okay, so I was listening... The first sort of things I listened to were Mum and Dad's records, and that was like... Neil Diamond, Stevie Wonder, Van Morrison, Santana, Fleetwood Mac, all the good stuff,
Yeah.
And then as I got into electric guitar playing, it was Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, a little bit more Santana, and then the 80s really came into full swing, and I got into The Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen. New Order, not so much Joy Division.
Right.
The Smiths a little bit. I very heavily got into like the mod scene, which was like R&B, soul, the Jam, the British beat, the Selector, and a bit of ska and that kind of stuff. And then I think what happened was all of those things came together. After all of that came together and sort of like this explosion went off in me, and it was about funk music.
Yeah, right.
We were in Paris touring around with Kate's jazz group. We'd been in Scotland playing the Edinburgh Festival, and we were in a club in Paris, and I'll never forget, it was the Funky Drummer was playing, and in this nightclub, and there was one girl dancing on the dance floor and that beat, and I was like, okay, this is something. And then Sex Machine and all of those things.
Yep.
It was so raw and crude and kind of like broken down. It was, this is the 80s, so everything was overproduced.
Yep.
And it was just so boom. And then I heard James Brown and the JBs and the Meters, and then I got back into Booker T and the MGs and all that Stax sort of sound, and I was like, okay. And I learned a few things. I learned a lot about guitar, that it wasn't just playing as many, super strokes as you could. It was about breaking down the rhythms and seeing how it works in with the drums and bass, and trying to kind of analyze that. And one day I'll do a video on my take of, what funk is. Like an example is a lot of people, and I've seen videos where a lot of people, they go, oh, this is an introduction to funk. So one of the funk chords is a 9 chord, and it sounds like this, right? And so really with funk you got to, and they do that, and it's like, well, yeah, that's like that's part of it, but really it's more like, and it's not about breaking down those notes, it's more like just kind of feeling the groove in your soul and kind of breaking. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And then being able to get back to full chords, but it's those little bits, and it's actually connected to what you were saying before about authenticity.
Yeah.
It's not about getting it right by the way it's sort of theoretically. It's about feeling it,
Yeah.
And so that hit me big time. And like the riff from Sex Machine, right, I thought was right,
Yep.
which sounds pretty funky.
Yep.
It's actually, the riff goes There's no incidental notes. You know why?
Yeah.
Because it's played by the drums.
The drums, exactly.
Right? So why step on his toes?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's the funky drummer.
Yeah.
He's doing all the grace notes on the snare. And my theory there is, I'm sure it's been talked about before. I'm not going to own it as my own theory, but my theory is, after listening to the meters, is that it comes from side drum playing in trad grip, marching along.
Yep.
Right? Because you've got a boom, boom. You've got a big marching drum, and they're going right?
Yep.
They're doing all those little syncopated beats, right? And so the guitar comes way, way later than all of that. That's the shit right there. So all the guitar has to play, if the beat is all the guitar has to play is right? It's just got to be simple.
If that even, eh?
If that
If
even. Yeah, you know it. So that really hit me like a kick in the butt, you know.
Yeah.
And then Prince comes along, you know, and so so to tie in to what we were talking about before, I know I'm sort of waxing.
It's good.
But this is what's going to happen with COVID, is people going to want to talk and share stuff, you know.
Please.
But one of the things I've learned from mentoring young people is that there are many ways to kind of stop your progress, right? And there's many ways to squash someone's, put out someone's fire, or shut someone down. And one of the ways, interestingly, is by telling someone they're a natural, right? You tell some kid they're a natural, right? And it does couple of things. One thing it might do is it might make them feel like they don't have to work, right? Another thing, it sets them up as their own hero and at a benchmark they're going to have to reach every time, right? Common folk call someone like Kate a natural, but I know she works really, really hard and has always worked really, really hard at her craft.
Yeah.
You know, someone's not a natural. No one is a natural runner. They get up at 4:30 in the morning.
You still got to practice regardless.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I know what you're saying there, and I understand that. And some people, you know, may be natural and they may find some things a bit easier.
Yep.
But still, you still got to practice, man. Like
there are some physiological things, for example, that are a wonderful predisposition to a certain skill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Vocal doctors can actually look into a person's voice box and go, okay, these vocal cords could work really well for singing. A sports scientist can look at a person's physique and go, well, that person's cut out for running.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if they put in the work, that they could really do that, you know. Mm-hmm. But when you say someone's a natural, then you go, well, I could never achieve that because they've got some kind of gift, some God-given gift, you know. So why would I try to attempt to be like them, you know? So when someone like Prince comes along, I don't know about you, but I just went, oh my God, I'm not worthy. This is beyond. This is ridiculous.
Right.
And then you realise hours of isolation, of practice and sitting in there, working the studio and working the groove and just hours and hours and hours and hours of it, you know, days, 10,000 hours, you know, the whole deal.
Yeah.
Same with Jimi Hendrix, right? They say that he was practicing and playing guitar the whole time. 10 years after I was into Hendrix, you know, and I'm thinking all those amazing guitar solos that he did, they must have been like one takes because they're so natural and they're so in the moment and blah, blah, blah. There was a bootleg of his home demo tapes.
Yeah, right.
Where his actual solos, note for note, that he would then go into the studio and play. Right.
Right.
So he's working them out ahead of time because, and he's doing it, So look, I'm not breaking down the hero myth or the kind of like God-like status myth, but what I'm trying to encourage is it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of focus on, okay, I'm going to get into this style now, I'm going to get into this thing and I'm going to break it apart and I'm going to try and work out how it all works, That's a lot of work, and that's what you got to kind of do. That's part of the deal.
When you get a student for the first time,
yeah,
what's your process there with that with that student?
Well, I don't teach. I've sort of helped a few.
Sorry,
folk.
I meant maybe from the Rock Academy thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. So it's more of a sort of a mentoring thing.
Yeah.
The first thing that we establish with Rock Academy is that what happens in Rock Academy stays in Rock Academy. It's we from this moment forth, the moment we meet and set up on the first day, whether they're new or whether they've been to a few Rock Academies, is that you are now a peer. You're now a one of us.
Cool.
Because we've got a gig on Friday.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
And whatever else you've done, you want to kind of see this as more of a professional relationship and a relationship based on respect and hard work and collaboration, because the magic comes when all of those things are aligned, along with your talent that you can bring and your openness and your generosity to bring in ideas, right? That's what we instill in them, or we try to kind of say. Some people, there'll always be one that doesn't sort of like quite get it. But then there's this other magic thing that can kind of happen where the other young people go into mentor roles themselves and help that person come on board somehow, give and take, which is kind of what we do in bands and have done all along.
Yep.
For example, we're talking about inclusion before and diversity and things like that. It's really important these days, right? I don't believe I ever heard that term in my 40 years playing music when you put a band together.
Mm.
It was just whoever was right, whoever felt right, and, whether someone was on the spectrum or had problems with this, you just worked with them and said, oh, no, that's just James. He's like that. He's kind of, I don't know what it is. He's kind of a bit OCD or whatever, but geez, when he plays, it makes the band rock. So that's, we keep him on board, he's great.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this program that we do is totally like that. It's like when we were young, putting bands together. If someone wasn't good at the guitar, it's like, well, why don't you try bass?
Yeah. Yep.
Or if someone came in, they broke their arm on riding a skateboard. It's like, okay, and they're the drummer. It's like, you're okay. So you can use the other one. Cool. You're playing tambourine and doing backing vocals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what that's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, you're asking sort of what I say. I say, there are cliches like always have an open mind, but if you don't really know where your mind's at as a kid, that's a bit of a tough call. I think be willing to collaborate is a good one because you learn along the way as you're sharing stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome because when you think of one-on-one teaching and I've done one-on-one drum teaching and stuff like that. I never really thought of it like that. It's like every now and then you talk about, when you are in a band situation, you might have to do this and this, but most of the time it was just, me and the student and me in a room and then maybe it was just my bad teaching or something. No, that's not what I mean. But
look, for me, like I learned drums for a while when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the one thing that, you know, I'm learning paradiddles and I'm learning double stroke rolls and I'm learning, you know, different things. And I was like, what? Where's this going?
Yeah, where's it going? Yeah.
Where's it going?
I just want to play in a band, man.
Well,
I just want to play in a band.
Yeah. And if that teacher had said to me just one time, if he'd said to me, okay, so you know how we've been doing paradiddles, right? Here's why. Let's say you're playing with a band and you need to do a roll around the toms, right? But the roll has a certain amount of numbers.
Yeah.
And you need to be as good on your left hand as your right, right? Because you've got to get back to the groove, right? So today's lesson, we're going to don't worry about the drum fill and don't worry about paradiddles. Today we're going to work on the groove and how that would sound in a band so that when we do the roll, you're not going to lose it coming back to the groove.
Yeah.
So giving it context the whole time is really important. And that gives a person a sense of purpose and a sense of self and where they fit in things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that's always brought me back to what it means to be a musician. You know, where do I fit, you know?
Very cool. Now
we've gone pretty deep, brother. We've gone pretty deep.
Early days. Hang on. I just burped off mic actually, so I was going to try and cue a burp up there, but that's gone.
No,
it'll come back.
It's good, mate.
Now, want to talk a little bit about martial arts and the crossover between, you know, the discipline that you learn in martial arts and into music.
Okay.
Has there been a direct crossover?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Without doubt.
Yep.
Without a doubt. Yeah. It's and we talked about it a little bit before. You know, it's not the guy with the 1,000 kicks. This is Bruce Lee. It's not the guy that has 1,000 techniques, or it's the one that has one technique that's done it 1,000 times, right? So the thing that you learn in martial arts, the discipline of that, is that you need to do basics over and over and over and drilling and drilling and drilling. You speak to a boxer and they've got their routine and they might have the most wicked right hook. That's not going to stop them from drilling and drilling and drilling that right hook, you know, and working out ways they can maybe, you know, place their feet so it can just be a little bit, just that tiny micro bit more effective, you know. And because it's physical and because you're training with another partner, there has to be respect there. Similarly, with a band, there has to be respect.
Yeah.
You know. So there's absolute correlation, and it's kind of helped me. It's helped me a lot actually. And I continue to train and I continue to learn. And even if that was the only thing that I take away from it, is that in life you have to be learning always. You have to always be learning, because if you stop learning, and it doesn't matter what it is, anything, just learn something new.
Yep.
If you stop, your mind actually contracts. It's like a muscle. If you don't work it, it sort of like contracts, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's a law of physics. That which doesn't expand contracts, you know? So, yeah, martial arts has been like that, and I'm always learning new stuff. But I still train a little bit in karate. I've trained most of my life in that, and that's great. But my challenge came about 7 years ago, where I was sparring one night with a brown belt, and we got down onto the mat on the ground, and he got me in a headlock. I didn't know how to get out of it. And I'm like, shit, you're a black belt. You've been training all your life. You don't know how to get out of a headlock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, right, well, I'm going to create my mission here, and that is to go and learn ground fighting. So grappling, BJJ, you know, jiu-jitsu, ground fighting. and so that then I can go back into karate and reintroduce the grappling and the throwing and all of that stuff, which would have been in karate and still is in many ways, but bring it back into our style so that we're capable on the ground as well. So, so always learning. It's very, very challenging. It's demanding physically because I'm 54 or something now, and that sucks ass because your body just your mind says go, but your body just won't do it. So I have to be a little bit more clever with it. But exactly the same as music. When I get stuck, I go back to my basics. I go back to the techniques, and that's the thing that will get you through. And so that's where I really appreciate and acknowledge really great music teachers, right? So like a really good martial arts teacher is someone that will really have a good respect for the basics without the basics and the fundamentals being an overarching part, because that's like when you get a guitar player and he's just playing scales, without any soul or any self-expression.
Yep.
There's that in martial arts as well. You have a way of, that's why it's called martial art, I guess, because you can express your own way, and for me, I have to get pretty creative at 54 to grapple with a 24-year-old, who's
right.
Built like a brick shithouse. So I have to really be, well, okay, how am I going to get not choked out here,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I know what you mean with the martial. I mean, I've trained martial arts most of my life.
Yep.
I got my black belt when I was 33.
Wow.
And then I broke my back. So that was that.
Oh man.
So that was kind of the end of my my martial arts career. I did try and go back and do some taekwondo and got thrown, and it kind of put my back out again. Yeah. And then that was it. But it gutted me. But yeah, going back, I know what you mean by the discipline thing. Martial arts certainly helped me with discipline with music and in practice.
Yeah.
I would, set myself a practice curriculum as if I would when I was training, doing my martial arts. Yeah. And the respect for your bandmates as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not, as you know, it's not for everyone,
Yeah.
A lot of people get put off by the combative side of it,
Yeah.
One of the things I often say to people is that one of the things I've learnt from martial arts or karate or any of that sort of stuff is the last thing I'd ever want to get into is a real fight in the street.
Yeah.
Because, when I see how much somebody can know and you never would guess that they do.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? You don't know that some guy on the street that's being annoying and you tell him to, F off. You don't know what he knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even the fact that he might have a gun in his back pocket. You don't know that.
That's the thing, yeah. Yeah.
So it's not worth it. So that's one of the greatest things it's taught me. And, I'd never want to ever do that. And I don't really, a lot of people get into martial arts because they actually like to hurt people. I don't like hurting people.
Yeah.
It's horrible,
I think those people, from my experience in the martial arts that I did, those people that came into our space where we were training, if they came in to hurt people,
they get sorted
they got
out,
hurt.
yeah.
They got hurt.
Yeah.
Not by me, but my master, he had a real good bullshit meter, eh? He could, as soon as somebody just walked in the door and he just picked it straight away.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was cool. Other instruments than guitar?
Not a whole lot.
Yep.
I sort of make my way around keyboards a little bit, just to kind of when I'm recording.
Yeah.
I'm not interestingly, I'm not a real I'm not a very technical musician. I find it difficult. My brain doesn't really take too easily to like the mathematics of music. And I'm really, really fortunate to have some of the most incredible musicians around me to work with and slot in with.
Yep.
So I'm able to describe certain colours and things musically, and they're able to do that, you know.
Yep.
And if there was one regret that I had in my life, and that is that I didn't focus, or probably couldn't have focused because I didn't have the ability to, but that I didn't actually get a bit more of that technical stuff under my belt, just to get my head around it a bit more, you know, the theory side of things. I reckon when I have kids, which is probably going to be soonish, will have to be soonish, is I think I'm going to kind of really encourage them to learn piano and music and be able to read a bit of music and do it like a fun thing, you know, because you hear so many stories of people, well, two things, to learn music, piano and learn another language. It just does so much for a young person's mind, I think, and brain as far as development and keeping them open to concepts and new learnings, you know what I mean? Like I've seen a kid who learns piano, knows all the notes, can read music. They'll pick up a guitar and they just go, oh, well, that note's that, so blah, 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 you know? And then soon enough they can play bass, guitar, you know, and then they'll pick up a saxophone. Jesus. You know,
this comes back to what we were saying before about the naturals.
Well,
with that you only get so far with that. You still got to fucking practice.
You do, but what they've got is they've got that foundation of having learned how to read and play music, so they know what the notes are. So they just relate it to the instrument.
Yep.
And go, you know, I've seen it. I've actually seen young guys do that. You know, it's fantastic.
Yep.
It's amazing. Of course, I've also played with those freaks that can play every instrument. And they just have that thing, you know. And they're a one in a million. You know, they're really a one in a million. But there are some of those guys out there.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Gee.
Do you mind if I just go to the toilet for one second?
Mate, go to the toilet, dude.
Come on, mate. Come on. Don't hold me back. Don't hold me back. No.
Are you going to stay? Leave it recording.
Yeah, leave it recording. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, sweet. Be back in a sec.
Yeah. So Stevie's just gone off to the toilet, and I thought I'd share a few thoughts with you while he's at the toilet. One of those thoughts is about what it's like to work in the studio when you're on your own. And it's a very closed-in environment. In fact, the key to noise reduction and making a very quiet space is closing out all the air. So it's basically an airlock. The resulting situation when you're working on your own for hours on end and you're really excited about the project that you're doing, you don't want to walk away, you tend to kind of fart every now and again. And, I think you can imagine what that's going to cause.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
We were talking earlier today about your fascination with success in the show business.
Yeah.
And examining, what that takes. So I want you to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Sure. Well, we've sort of covered a little bit when we were talking about heroes.
Yep.
And hero worship. And like I was saying, I've kind of had those people that I've looked up to, real life people in my life as I was growing up. My mother, my father, some of my father's incredible students that trained under him in karate, and they were my heroes. They were just like, they were gods, you know. I would look up to them and I'd want to be like them, you know. And then through the 70s, there was Bruce Lee, and then later on there was Jimi Hendrix, and there was Jimmy Page, and then of course, you know, David Bowie, and that they became my kind of like mythical heroes, if you will, because they're distant, you know, they're not in the flesh, it's not personal. And the downside of it was that, like I was saying earlier, was that was such a high benchmark to kind of like aspire to be like.
Mm.
The problem there was that it was all too easy to say, well, I can never be like that, or it's not sounding enough like Hendrix, or, you know, oh, God, you know, and you're constantly comparing yourself to someone who's done the 10,000 hours, that's done the hard yards, that's, you know, someone like Bowie, for example, he started off as one thing, went into another.
Yeah.
You know, Space Oddity was first released in, I think, the late 60s, and then re-released in 1970 because it kind of, the record company had to pull it because of the Apollo 13 disaster.
Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Right. So then it had to be re-released, you know. So,
right.
Yeah. So not every one of our heroes was a hit straight off, you know. But mythologically we want them to be. So we'll project that onto them because you know, they can do no wrong. They're our heroes, right? So I became fascinated with what makes a hero, what makes the mythology of a, you know, a kind of an icon. Yeah, and mostly we project that, but also it can be fabricated, and it's a really great PR campaign, you know. Bob Dylan is a perfect example of that, and even himself, in his book, the Bob Dylan Chronicles, in the first couple of chapters, he talks about sort of the invention of Bob Dylan, and before that, everyone's wondering why he didn't do interviews for many, many, many years, right? And he talks about it. He says, well, if I was doing interviews and deconstructing how I created Bob Dylan and how I write my songs and what they mean and gave the formulas to how to do it, it's giving away the myth.
Yeah.
It's also not letting people put their own interpretation or their own swing on things, right? So he was like, I'm just going to put it out there and let people decide for themselves, right? I'm not going to claim to be the Messiah or anything or the next, you know, I just write what I feel and I'm just going to throw it out there. That's one side of it. Now, the myth creation side of it is that one of his biggest influences in his early career wasn't the other folk singers, wasn't the other musicians, wasn't Woody Guthrie. It was Woody Guthrie, but one of his biggest driving forces was his publisher, an old Jewish guy that lived uptown New York, and said, you know, give me some of your songs and I'll sell them off to TV commercials and pop stars. We'll make so much money, then you'll be able to do whatever you like, right? Which doesn't sound very rock and roll, does it? It sounds very commercial and very sellout.
Yeah.
But if you think about that as a formula in the early part of your career, he's a professional making money out of his dream, which then affords him to be able to buy studio equipment, record with the best musicians in the world, pursue his dreams, and create the most incredible music moving forward, right? So, but you don't let that story get in the way of the myth. So therefore, you tell that 30, 40 years later. You don't tell it in the moment.
Yep.
Right? So it fascinated me, really, really, really fascinated me. The myth was that he jumped a freight train with his guitar, and he came into the stockyards of New York and then hitchhiked his way into New York City and slept on the streets, No, he was in a heated, beautiful big old Buick with a friend of the family's, sat in the back seat. They dropped him at Port Authority right in the middle of New York, and he stayed his first couple of weeks in a cheap hotel, right? That's not as sexy as the other story, is it? So don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, right? Create the myth, and and it's not untruthful. It's just that's part of rock and roll. Yep. That's part of the thing you have to do. So I've become very obsessed and very interested in what creates that sort of thing, what creates the myth around people. And I came up with a little slogan that I've applied to myself because it was getting me down. It reached a kind of, it's like blues mythology where you reach a crossroads, right? That's a whole other thing, you know.
Yeah.
That's like you can never be brilliant unless you've done a deal with the devil, right? You can never just be great and have practiced heaps and just be awesome. You must have done a deal with the devil, So I reached a crossroads. It wasn't like that, but my crossroads was, geez, do I quit this whole thing? Because I'm never going to be as good as Hendrix. I'm never going to be as good as Prince. I'm never going to be as good as David Bowie. Those guys are just next level. So I decided to turn it on its head, and I said to myself, you've got to stop being the fan and start being the man on all things, on your personal life, on your physical life with your fitness and health, on your attitude toward other people. Be someone that you want to be, someone that you would look up to. Become your own hero in a way, And when someone asks you, who's your favourite guitarist, at the risk of sounding conceited and full of yourself and flying up in the face of Australian kind of self-deprecation, when someone says, who's your favourite guitarist, say, well, I am.
Yeah.
Because no one else is getting me gigs. The
man. I'm the man.
Yeah, I'm the man. I'm
Exactly.
the man. And it's I get that attitude and that approach because it's just saying like, well, when someone says to me, hey, do you reckon you'll be able to pull off a great dance set tonight? I'll say to them, you have booked the right guy. I am the dude for this. I've come with 35 years experience. I'm the man. When you go to get your car fixed, right? If the mechanic said, if you asked the mechanic, so do you think you can fix my car? And they said, oh, there are other guys. You would fuck off immediately. Yeah.
I'm good on the wheels. I can change wheels, but yeah.
No, he's going to say, I'm the dude.
Yeah.
I'm all over this. Trust me, I can fix this. It should be the same with this kind of thing that we're doing, It's like, and also know your limitations, like Clint Eastwood says in one of the Dirty Harry movies. Man's got to know his limitations. If you're not the man,
that sounded like Samuel L. Jackson.
I know it did.
It sounded nothing like fucking Dirty Harry. Eh? Come on, man. Be the man.
Man's got to know his limitations.
Man got to know his motherfucking limitations.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not the man in a certain area, be honest enough with yourself to say, I'm not the right dude for this. But here's what you can do, which will help you be the man.
Yeah.
I'm not the right dude for this, but I know just the guy.
Yeah,
I'm going to give you his number. You call this guy. That makes you the man.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've helped someone else. So being the man isn't just, and I say this in a way, these days with political correctness and everything, You can't say man, woman. You can't say anything these days. All I mean is be you. Be
I
the
know,
best.
yeah.
You know
I know what
I'm
you mean.
saying.
I think
what I'm
I think people know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being the man isn't about being a self-centered narcissist either.
Yeah.
It's about knowing your value and knowing what you can actually deliver, right?
Yeah.
And knowing the value of it, that, yeah, I can deliver that. I'm the dude for that.
Yeah.
So that changed my life, that whole philosophy, because it made me reappreciate Prince and Bowie and Bob Marley and Dylan and Hendrix and all of those godlike icons, right? Because they had reached a point where they go, yep, I'm the man. There's a scene at the very end of that movie, Sound City, with the Dave Grohl does.
Yep.
And they're recording with Paul McCartney. And Paul McCartney's playing this 4-string cigar box guitar, and they recorded a song. And it's rocking. And it's awesome. Dave Grohl and the band can't believe they're playing with Paul McCartney. And then at the very end, Dave Grohl says, oh man, I wish it could be as easy as this every time, right?
Mm.
And Paul McCartney says, it is.
That's it. Hey.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you can be certain. There's no certainties in life, right? But you can be more certain if you've put in the hours, right?
Yeah.
Let's examine, for example, the myth of the Beatles. They didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They had done 2 or 3 years straight playing the Reeperbahn in Germany, in Hamburg or wherever it was, playing six or seven sets a day and then into the night for, months and months on end, playing every kind of musical style that they could, and just for hours and hours and hours. They'd done 10,000 hours already before they, came back to Liverpool and were as the Beatles, right? So they'd done a lot of hard yards. They'd done a shitload of hard yards. It just didn't happen overnight, So that by the time Paul McCartney gets to play with Dave Grohl, he's the man. It doesn't take that long to become that, right? But you need to get to a point once you've gathered all your influences, gathered all your styles, and gone, all right, well, I know what I can do. I know what I'm not great at. I know what I can't do, but I definitely know what my thing is. That's my thing. That's where I can be the man. I'm going to be the man there. So that's what has that's where I've arrived at from my examination of what it takes to be in, to stick out a little bit in showbiz and to have a career in showbiz. You have to be the man.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Has that kind of gone the other way for you? If you've sort of kind of come across that way, people have seen that as arrogance and been turned away?
In the world, I've kind of like seen it this way.
Mm.
If you speak up, you're outspoken. If you have confidence, you're arrogant or you're conceited. Right. If you have a talent and you want to show it, you're a show-off. If you are really good at something and you make another person feel sort of insecure, then you're full of yourself, right? There's no escape from the slings and arrows, right?
Mm.
To be or not to be, So what you can do in show business, underneath the heading of the myth, is you can actually create humility. You can fake humility, right? You can have worked and done the 10,000 hours and be an incredible songwriter with 500 songs in your vault, and then you come out for interviews and you're really shy. And I don't know. I work really hard, and I really appreciate your your compliments. Thank you very much. Right, and then they go back in the studio and they are motherfuckers. No, it doesn't go like that. It goes like this, you know. But their myth as a personality in the world, in showbiz, is humble, shy, da-da-da. I'm just posing this. That could well be created, you know. That could well be just a part of their act, you know, like the Liam and Noel act, you know, which I find wonderful. I find hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't think they would be as Oasis as they are if they didn't do that, you know. Liam is just amazing, incredible, you know. But whether the line between act and real, who cares? The line between I think when someone's arrogant is when they can't back it up with real fucking incredibly hard worked out talent, you know. And even if they do have that, you have to have humility, you have to have empathy, you know, and you have to have a sense of care of other people. But I'm way into when someone's confident enough to say, you know what, get that mic out of my face. You know, you're shitting me off here. You know, and the media don't like it because they want to get a story, right? So they quite often I'll see, you know, headlines like, you know, someone has a tantrum, and I look at it and I go, well, no, that's not that. That's not them having a tantrum. That's them being harassed by you fuckers.
That's how I see it too. Yeah.
You know? So I've had a bit of a reputation, I think, of arrogance.
Okay.
And I totally stand accused that in the early days, I had an amazing team of friends and bandmates around me, and we all would back each other. We had each other's back, and the confidence, the overconfidence was unbearable. It was unbearable.
I like that.
You know,
the overconfidence was unbearable.
It was. It was totally unbearable. But we were too young to know any better. You know? And later in life, I kind of, I not regret it, but I do look back and I do totally respect why that label would have been placed on me, you know.
Right.
One of my best mates was the drummer in my band, and he was also the tour manager, and he was also my sister's boyfriend. And, you know, I could do no wrong. He was like, go for it, mate, go. And, you know, we had each other's backs. You know, we were like brothers in arms. And I wasn't sucking up to the right people. You know, I would call a spade, whereas, you know, a lot of young musicians these days have very good advice from very good management that person over there is someone you should butter up. Don't step out of line with that person because he can help you in your career, right? I kind of didn't get that advice so much. So I think it burned a few bridges in the early days.
Right.
But you know, I think I've made up a bit of ground, but and you know, we're talking 25, 30 years ago, you know.
Right.
But those people have long memories.
Right. So can you speak of one particular moment where that has possibly worked against you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally I could.
You don't have to say names, not asking for names.
All right. Well, okay. Well, we were on a TV show once, and this is a long time ago. It was probably one of the only TV shows where they were, you know, they had live bands and things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if I can talk about this. Probably can. Yeah, it's probably, what do they call it? Statute of limitations. So Kate was assigned a dressing room, and a young girl came in with a clipboard who was working with the TV show, like a sort of an assistant. and said that Kate would need to share that room with 15 other dancers, right? And I was standing at the door at the time. I said, no, she won't. And the girl said, no, well, yes, she has to because we don't have any other dressing rooms. I said, well, Kate's not sharing the room with 15 other dancers. Okay, so go and speak to whoever you have to speak to, but it's not going to happen, all right? Just now off you go,
Right.
because this is – now I was prepared to be the bulldog and the doorman and take the fall and be thrown under the carpet, thrown under the bus.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's because it's what being a sideman is sometimes, right? Problem was that girl was related to the boss of the network. And we were boycotted from the show for about 2 months.
Oh, shit.
Right?
Right.
So and it was a big process to have to get back on and a lot of apologies given, right?
Right.
So a kind of an example of my youthful arrogance, but at the same time defending what I thought was right.
Yeah.
But not being given the advice that, well, no, you don't. You've got to butter her up because she's the niece of the boss, right? So I found myself in a lot of situations like that where I would just say what I thought.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, later on, there were some situations where later on I'd apologise and meet up with the person. They say, oh, no, mate, you were fine. You were just a young guy full of beans. But some of them have said to me, yeah, well, you were never going to work in Sydney again for a few years, but, that's all right. I'm not joking, seriously.
No, I believe you. I don't mean to laugh because it's funny. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah. And similar scenarios like that. But, at the end of the day, you kind of have to just sort of, I don't know, roll with it.
Roll with it, yeah.
Get over it. And, my thought is that I never claimed to be an expert in public relations back then at the age of 23.
Yep.
All I was making claims to is just get me on the stage and I'll put on a show and I'll entertain the punters. Everything else at the moment is the jury's out. When I'm in work in progress, I've got no idea which way's up, but put me on the stage and, I'll do everything I can to make it a great show,
Yeah.
But I didn't understand how to express that back in those days.
Right, gotcha. Gotcha.
And also when family's involved, there's another level of, and it could be interpreted as arrogance or it could just be interpreted as like brotherly, protective nature.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah.
So, there was that there as well.
Yeah, because we look after our own,
Oh, absolutely.
It's that,
It's that.
Yeah.
It's that, Yeah.
Very cool. Now, so like you said, you and your wife have a PR company, Flourish PR.
Yeah.
Myself, I don't understand what a PR company is.
Yeah.
So, now I'm Stevie Taylor from the Gig Life podcast, and I'm coming to you, Flourish PR.
Yep.
What are you going to do for the Gig Life podcast? If I was to come to you as a client, just so I can understand what a PR company does, because to be honest, I'm not quite sure.
Okay. So the way I describe PR to people, it's a very misunderstood industry.
Mm-hmm.
PR comes under the banner of marketing, right?
Right.
And partnered up with advertising. So advertising, the way I describe it, advertising is they're the people that arrange the site to put the billboard on. They'll do the artwork and come up with the slogan.
Okay.
And they'll book the models. take the photos, and they'll put the billboard up on the side of the highway,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And hopefully it's eye-catching enough to get people to lift their heads up and look at it. And for the 2, 3 or 4 seconds that it's there, right, that image and the slogan and the brand gets imprinted on their brain.
Right.
The part that PR plays in that is once they've looked up at the billboard, they go, something registers not only the slogan and the brand, but they go, oh, I've heard of that before, right? So they've heard of it through an article they've read or an interview that they were listening to or a podcast or an influencer on social media that was talking about it or someone in a podcast mentioning it, right?
Right.
And so this is all about what PR does is it brings things from the back of the mind to the front of mind. Oh, yeah, right. I've heard about that thing, right? So that's what PR does. It's
Right.
like let's say Tama, right?
Pearl. Let's say Pearl.
Let's say Pearl, right? Brings out and yeah, good. Okay, you've just explained it to yourself right there.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so we're in a conversation on a podcast or an interview. I'm your PR agent, and I have said to you, if they say Tama, you say Pearl, right? And if you've forgotten to do that, I'm off camera going, Pearl.
Okay,
Right?
gotcha.
That's what a PR guy does.
Okay.
Right? That's it. That's all it is.
Right.
Right? So then it's up to the rest of the marketing team and the advertising team to link up all of those things. Right?
Right.
Stevie said Pearl, right? You can find Stevie's endorsement link at the bottom of the recorded version of that interview, right, to the Pearl website,
Right.
where his vlog vlog talks all about his latest kit.
Right.
Right, that's what we do.
Right. Very cool.
Right. So with your podcast, you know, it could be anything from getting other influencers to talk about your podcast, to get a government body to to get you on to talk about how you've been talking to musos and what they feel about a life in isolation without gigs, right? Which gives them a story and it gives you a story.
Right.
And then that story brings people to your podcast.
Right.
That's what PR is.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It is, but you can see how it's a very creative field because you have to be dodging and weaving and kind of like and trying to work out how to weave in conversation.
You got to know the trends and what people are looking at and listening to and
you got it.
Following and liking and that kind of stuff, eh?
Yeah, totally. And quite often with products, when it comes to products, I mean, let's take it away from drums because you've got an affiliation already. You know,
I don't. I don't. I just.
You should have.
Well, I play Pearl, and after today, hopefully I'll be signing that. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, just think about guitars, right? Like when I in the late 70s and 80s, early 80s, everyone played Strats, right? And it wasn't until Slash came along, right? And I do believe a lot of the early Guns N' Roses stuff was played on a copy Les Paul.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
So he basically put Les Pauls back on the map.
Yep.
Right? And that's brilliant PR, right? So then a PR company would jump in and say, okay, well, we're going to represent Slash, right? And we're going to create a deal with Gibson.
Yep.
You know, so they become that person. My wife worked with Sony Music for 10 years.
Oh, right.
And and she would do things like Guns N' Roses coming into town. We need to find an extra 50 grand for billboards. Let's approach Harley Davidson, right? Because it's a similar brand that kind of that helps each other out, Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I do,
they
yeah.
would come on board with a deal to help promote the tour,
Right.
and also give naming rights. So that's also what a PR sort of entity will do.
Right.
Yes, it's a lot in it. Yeah.
It is. There is a lot in it.
Well, I'll tell you
so
what,
many variables. Yeah.
yeah, there is. And another thing we're doing a lot of is podcasts. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, so corporates, who better to tell about a product than the CEO of the company, right?
Right.
So getting them into a podcast and talking about the company rather than some representative, it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, right? So doing a podcast with the CEO of a company that's selling, I don't know, let's say they're selling kitchen products, right? And getting them talking to someone who's an incredible chef, right? Or someone from MasterChef or someone who's just a really great person that loves to cook.
Yeah.
It's engaging. It's like we were saying before, it's authentic. It's got all the kind of conversational traits of a natural conversation and without plugging away and selling products. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you get the picture?
I do, 100%.
Yeah.
Now, I have a segment on the podcast now, and it's fairly new. It doesn't have a name yet.
Yeah.
Working on that. And basically what it is, I have a Gig Life Podcast Spotify playlist.
Yeah.
And up until a while ago, that playlist has had songs that have featured all the guests that I've had in some way. They may have played on a song, or it's their song. So what I've decided to do is kind of add to the list by I ask my guest to choose one song, and only one song only, that's had the biggest what they think is the biggest influence on them. Okay. And I'm going to ask you what that song is now.
Okay. So without kind of letting the listeners in on the fact that we've already had the conversation and you already know what song it is, you've got it ready to line.
It's ready to go.
It's ready to go.
Yeah.
The song that I'm thinking of would have to be Heroes by David Bowie. There are probably 100 other songs as well that have had a lot of influence on me, but that song just seems to strike a chord in my heart and soul that, I don't know, of course David Bowie died, it was a couple of years ago now, a few years ago, and I was in San Francisco at the time working with my wife, and I got a message on my phone in the middle of the night from someone back here in Australia about Bowie, and I sat in the lounge room and looked across the city skyline of San Francisco and played Heroes and just burst into tears and blah, blah, blah. And what I love about that song is that it has so much emotion, but it's not cheesy. It has so much power, but it's not kind of like macho or masculine. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of rock and roll, but it's not obviously kind of it's not, the influences aren't so obvious that it's like pastiche. Yep. It's truly original.
Yep.
But at the same time, they're obviously not kind of incredibly intricate chord changes or, incredibly sort of thought through, clever dick parts.
Yep.
They just, all the ducks are in a row on that song.
Yep.
The production and the parts and his vocal, and even from just a production perspective, when the producer sits down and talks about it, there's a video you can see where Visconti, the producer, talks about each track. There was just a really organic approach to layering up all the different sounds that make that incredible soundscape.
Yep.
And emotionally, it just kills me. There's something so powerful about it, you know? And I'll never forget when it came out and the film clip was just him, you know, looking weird and kind of alien-esque, and I was just thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to. That's something to kind of aspire to. Is that kind of thing, that sort of expression.
Yeah.
But without being an imitation, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For me, that song, the guitar is just hypnotic.
It's hypnotic, yeah. So that's Robert Fripp, and he did 2 takes, and they kept them both in, and it's just, and you know, everyone, see, this is where the geekness comes in. Everyone goes, oh, it's EBO because it's a constant sort of sustained note. It wasn't. He just had the he just set his guitar so that it was distorting enough to sustain, and he stood close enough to the amp so it would just sustain long notes, you know.
Oh, wow.
And it hasn't been thought through, you know. It's just like, all right, just do this sort of thing. And
this goes back to what you said really early on about performing and like singing that bung note or playing that wrong chord, or, you know, but like Bowie's vocal, if you're going to try and analyse vocal, it's not perfect vocal, but it's fucking Bowie, man.
That's right. And, you know, I've got to say, yeah, it's so.
I remember, like, listen to that's, you know, that's.
Yeah.
That's out there.
Totally. And there's certain ways that he falls off a note, which is like technically wrong.
Yeah,
but
right.
In every way it's right.
Yep.
You know, it's so right. And I dearly hope that the young singers of today don't just dismiss those sorts of people because they're not necessarily technically right on the money. You've also got to have that funk in there, you know, and Bowie definitely did have that. He's one of my biggest influences of all, is Bowie. Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
Mm.
Now, going back to the COVID thing, there's been a handful of things that have kind of stood out to me on social media that have made me smile and made me laugh, and I honestly can't wait to see the next one.
Yeah.
And one of those things has been your ISO dancing.
Yeah.
Seriously. So, listeners, go to the show notes, go to Phil's Instagram. There's a whole bunch of Phil's dancing. It's if it doesn't make you smile, I'll give you a free
one of those beers.
I'll give you a beer. Next time I see you, I'll buy you a beer. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So how'd that come about, man? Just that idea of that
I was
dancing.
literally sitting on the couch, and the whole absurdity of this thing kind of really sort of hit home.
Yep.
And it actually got my wife and I really down. Like we were like really devastated because our business is taking off and gigs are going great, and it for a lot of people, 2020 was going to be the year, you know?
Yep.
And I kept thinking about Gene Kelly singing in the rain, you know? And I was like, you know, the only way we're going to be able to get through this lockdown is by having some sense of fun, absurdity, ridiculousness, you know, lightheartedness, a bit of humour, because the double irony of it is that literally it's an Instagram post that's 15 seconds long, right? And I've literally been sitting on the couch watching Ozark just before it, right? And going, oh.
How good's season 3, by the way?
So good. So good.
Watch Ozark.
Yeah,
this podcast was brought to you by Ozark season 3.
Oh, it's so good. But I was like, you know what? I've got to do something to sort of shake me out of it, you know, because I can't do my martial arts. I can't do my surfing. I can't do, I can't go fishing with my Uncle Jeff. I can't do any of that. I got to shake this out somehow, And I just started it up, and it was like, oh, that feels good. I look forward to doing this each night, And I've gotten a bit slack in the last few days, I guess, because
you have.
I have,
and I've been down. It's got me down.
It's got you down, yeah. That's. I actually nominated a couple of people to do some ISO dances, and a couple of people came forward.
Oh, good.
I'm also doing some 25 push-ups thing as well, which I do every morning. But
yeah, you can have that.
Yeah, I know. But the ISO dance thing actually makes me feel good, and
great.
It just is this sort of sense of absurd kind of freedom, and I think more people should do it. My wife thinks I should get on TikTok and all of that. I've checked all of that out. It's a bit next level, but I'll explore it or whatever. I don't, even though I'm in show business and I love doing gigs, but I'm not really great at the whole look at me sort of thing. It's not about that. It's about
I gotcha.
It's more about, hey, we're all stuck at home. Here's something. I'm just going to do something, and here it is. It's my little offering.
One of my favourites is when you're outside the restaurant.
Oh yeah,
and the couple walk past with the dog. And they don't even look.
They don't even
and
look.
They've seen you.
They're like yeah.
They've walked past and gone, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Who was this guy?
I know. That was one of the first nights we actually got out of the house.
Yeah. I think that's how you captioned it too,
yeah,
wasn't
it? Was
we're out. Yeah.
Big night out. We're driving around the corner of the pizza shop. So look, I'm inspired. I'll do one tonight just for you.
Oh, great. That'd be good.
Have you got any requests? Any funky songs or anything? Just anything.
Actually, I'll have to go and look. Oh, okay. So on that then, there's a whole Spotify playlist of Phil's songs for the ISO dance. So I'll link that in the show notes. Go and check it out.
Yeah.
Okay, let me have a quick look and
just make sure it's not one that I haven't already done, or even better, just pick a random tune that you love.
Moloko, Sing It Back.
Done.
Thank you.
Done. I love that tune.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. That was a great era of dance music.
It sure was.
It really was.
And that was kind of around that time where we were talking, where things started getting a bit dark.
Professor Groove time, Sydney
time. It was late 90s, early 2000s, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Sing it back.
I might do a whole series of that era. Sing it back.
Great.
Lady, you remember?
Lady, yes.
Oh,
yes.
So good.
Lady, hear me tonight. Because my feelings.
It's just so right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, all right. I'll do that.
Phil Ceberano, it's been an absolute joy, man, hanging out with you tonight and having a chat. Can't wait to actually sit down and
have a beer together sometime.
Have a beer together and have a laugh. And thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it. And all the best for the coming months. And I'll be watching the ISO dances, man. I can't wait.
All right, I'm going to do the 90s dance era. Okay.
That's so cool.
Okay, all right.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Stevie. Good on you.
All right, Phil. Take it easy, man.
Cheers.
All right, see you, brother.
you.